You shall now speak, Soto. I'll give you permission, but yeah, HotMEOWTH, who saw there, is great personality, has a lot of fans, as we saw. Apparently, he's best waifu. I was not aware, but sure, seems reasonable.
I don't dispute that, but yeah, amazing story at BlizzCon. He's gone down in everyone's memories, and there's often an argument for doing that. You know, it's like if you're going to go out in a blaze of glory, and that's what he did with the Blood Warriors deck. But I think we're not far off getting into the game as we join it basically where we left it when you came to us last time. Obviously, this game has been progressing off camera, but we're going to rejoin it after the recap of the Pirate Warrior mirror that we gave you, which PNC took. And this is the Reno Mage versus Miracle Rogue matchup that I was alluding to. And just a quick recap, remember, these two players are both bringing Miracle Rogue, Aggro Shaman, Pirate Warrior, Reno Mage, banning Shaman from their opponent. These are the 4 best power decks in the format, just going up against each other.
Yeah, and interesting that both players haven't brought the Aggro Rogue that's really jumped in popularity. They've just brought good old Rogue that we saw from last week. They both play one version of Beneath the Grounds, which is an important card in this matchup specifically. It's pretty much why you bring the card.
Absolutely.
In Rogue, you want to target those Reno decks, just in case anyone doesn't know. Beneath the Grounds shuffles 3 of the same card into your opponent's deck, and when they draw them, they create a 4/4 on your side of the board. So the 4/4 is nice, but not having your opponent be able to play Reno is actually nicer.
Which is a wonderful example of just an evolving application of a card in Hearthstone, because when Beneath the Ground was released, it didn't really have that Reno intention to be targeted at. It was just kind of a card that you could try and get value from over the game. Now suddenly we're in this period of Reno dominance, and everyone rewinded back to this old card and went, well, hang on. This puts 3 copies of the same card in there. This is really, really useful to us right now.
Yeah, and you can see the game now getting off to a relatively slow start. We had Doomsayer come out there and just make sure HotMEOWTH didn't do anything too crazy. But looking at the hands, HotMEOWTH is going to be feeling pretty good about the way his hand is shaping up. Double Tomb Pillager. Then he has Questing, Gadgets, and Conceal, which are great. And is this pretty much going to be the standard go for creating huge minions, conceal them, don't get them cleared somehow against the mage, and then finish up with just a high volume of damage?
I imagine so, yeah. The fact there's 2 Tomb Pillagers in hand for HotMEOWTH means he can get enough fuel for his Auctioneer without really having to waste a Conceal, if you want to put it that way, on his Auctioneer. He can just get enough value out of it straight away with the double coins, maybe pick up a prep, another spell to go along with it, etc. And then the 2 Conceals in his deck, he can try and aim those specifically at just 2 huge minions on 2 consecutive turns, or just 1 minion, jam Cold Blood on it, hit face, conceal, hit face again the next turn, conceal it again. That's what really ends the game against Reno Mage, because they can clear a board just fine. They can heal back to 30 just fine. They can't do the same, both of those in the same turn. So that's the kind of situation you have to try and put them in.
Yeah, it's like the accumulation of just too many objectives, right? You know, you make them just juggle objectives really to put them under a lot of pressure. But PNC does have a Blizzard into Volk Potion combo, and that together deals 4 to a board. And 4 is a very, very good number to deal to Rogue. It actually just kills most of their minions outside a huge Fang Cleave or an overgrown Quest Adventurer. Make it sound like a weed.
An overgrown...
You know what, they feel like weeds sometimes. You can't get rid of them. You try, and they just keep growing.
My garden is infested with questing adventurers. But I do just want to rewind back a couple of turns. PNC chose to coin the Burgly Bully on an empty board against Rogue, which, you know, no arguments. Great minion to have on an empty board against Rogue. But he also had the Kazakus in his hand, which he chose not to play. And you've mentioned already the threat of Beneath the Grounds in HotMEOWTH's deck. So the longer you go just without playing Kazakus in this matchup, which is a huge tool in your favor, because even the 5-mana potion for 4 damage AoE is amazing for this exact situation that you see here. The longer you wait, the more you run the risk of Beneath the Grounds coming down, and then your Kazakus is just a 4-mana 3/3.
Yeah, well also the Kazakus, if it came down, like applies just ultimate mind pressure to your opponent.
Mind pressure?
Mind pressure, it's a new thing I'm working on. Stick with me here.
All right.
So would HotMEOWTH have even made this turn if Kazakus had been played? Maybe not, because if that gets cleared, suddenly, as you mentioned earlier, just kind of wasted a Conceal. Like, you know, just went Gadgets and Conceal, yeah, you drew a card, but the whole point of that play is to build into a gigantic value turn the turn after. And if you say, well, look, I've got a Kazakus potion, what if it's the 4 damage, what if it's the Polymorph 1 that automatically targets the only minion left? PNC is going to go for the Kazakus now, so we'll see what he goes for. It's going to be a 5-mana potion to start off with them.
Yeah, and despite the slightly Janky choice of phrase. The analysis was absolutely on point. I think if the Kazakus potion was in hand already, sight unseen from HotMEOWTH, the mind pressure, yeah. Then I'm sure we probably would have seen HotMEOWTH go something more down the line as what I described, just gathering the coins in his hand, getting natural value out of Auctioneer, but he was just free to play it here and forget about the beneath the grounds factor. PNC choosing not to play the Kazakus means that he just didn't get this down in time to punish an Auctioneer after it came down, and now HotMEOWTH just has this glorious free Gadgetzan Auctioneer turn, which Rogues will be doing their best to get value out of before Conceal goes bye-bye in a little while's time.
Yeah, I do feel like both players are having to toe a very fine line as to how they approach the rest of this game. You know, you just mentioned about the Gadgetzan turn for HotMEOWTH. Look at PNC. He actually has so much value, so much flexibility because of that Inkmaster Solier in hand, combined with a card like Blizzard, or his Potion, or Volk Potion. You know, both players actually have great hands. It's just who edges it a little.
Hatches is going to come down here, so I think this is going to be his push, and the second Conceal is coming out now. So here's where the slight issue comes in, because now after this turn, you are stuck in a position where your minions are just exposed and vulnerable for the rest of the game, because you use that first Conceal a little bit quickly to conceal the Auctioneer, which, again, I don't blame him for the situation we discussed where Kazakus was not played. But HotMEOWTH now is going to have to get the job done with revealed minions, essentially. He's going to have to, heaven forbid, allow his opponent to interact with his board for the rest of the game and still try and push over the line. It might come down to a beneath the grounds this game.
It's almost like blasphemy for a rogue, that, isn't it? Like, what? You can target my minions? This isn't allowed.
So now PNC, I think, is considering whether to just freeze this board with the potion or whether to go for Blizzard, which, you know, deals the small amount of damage and freezes as well, because even once these minions are revealed, he doesn't really have a nice way to just tidy them all up at the same time. So he needs to start thinking about spacing out his AoE effects and spacing out his sources of damage, which gets even more complex because of this Solier that he's now choosing to play this turn, to find the most effective way of clearing this board, plus the 1 or 2 minions that are going to keep coming down in the future over the next 2 or 3 turns.
Yeah, I think this is the strongest play overall that PNC could have made, mainly because you really want that 5-5-1, because you're actually putting HotMEOWTH relatively low in health, but also you have to make the presumption that the Quest Adventurer is going to get huge this turn.
Right.
So if you can get 5 extra potential damage to trade into it, you take that potential. Because otherwise, you know, if it grows, if 3 or 4 cards are played, then great, Fireball doesn't kill it anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you can easily be pushed outside of the range of any damage you've got available to you.
Yeah, HotMEOWTH just has the world at his fingertips this turn. 8 mana to start with, Auctioneer still at the board, plenty of cheap options in hand already, and I believe both preps still left in his deck, quite possibly. I'm not sure we've seen one used.
Wow, this is the strength of Quest and Adventure in this deck. You are sapping an Inkmaster Solier to potentially give your opponent a kind of free spell to a certain extent, and the idea is he's going to gain so much from this turn that it won't matter what his opponent plays, regardless of, you know, getting a free 5-5 to a certain extent.
Right, and I think that's the important distinction, because when you describe it as a free spell, I understand what you're getting at, but there is a very, very important point. That spell costs 7 mana, because the 5-5 is way too slow to affect this board in any relevant way at this point. So if he wants to play, spend 7 mana to play any given spell in his deck at this point, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. Yeah, the only real, like, I would say huge benefit would be if he solid into Frost Nova.
Right.
Because then you get the 5-5 and you stall the board to put your opponent in the same position they were in last turn. But this is looking very, very difficult for PNC to claw his way out of here. I think we might see the Courier come down because he just needs a stronger answer than what he has available.
Yeah, just looking at the threats he has out here, again, that's the double freeze that he has of the 5 mana potion that you just saw him mouse over. So that's not enough to completely lock out this damage. And the ratio of, you know, Firelands Portal, Arcane Blast, Volcanic Potion, it's just not really going to get the job done quick enough. This does at least take care of the Auctioneer, so he doesn't have to worry about the Infinite Engine anymore, but he doesn't really have too much of a long-term plan. So I think you might be right in that we might see Courier come down this turn just to try and find some better answer for the following turn.
Yeah, this is definitely a tricky one.
They could actually, I think he's going to go Potion. Yeah, he's going to go Volcanic and then freeze the 2 minions on the board just to completely reduce the damage again. But as you mentioned, this questing is just going to get bigger and bigger once again, and he's just got a new pile of questions to answer, but HotMEOWTH has a fantastic answer of his own. There is that beneath the grounds that we have been talking about the whole game. So now the Reno Jackson is extremely unlikely to have an impact in this game.
No, this is, yeah, as you said, like, because the game is so far forward, normally Beneath the Grounds comes out relatively early, and you're like, okay, maybe they'll draw, I'll draw enough cards and it's not a problem. This game could just end in a turn or so at this point, in which there was just not enough card draw for PNC to draw through the Beneath the Grounds cards and, deactivate Reno, or to reactivate Reno, should I say, for PNC.
Prepping out the Beneath the Grounds there just for the benefit of being able to play this one additional small-time Buccaneer, which I guess is worthwhile in the long run.
I think he's just thinking, why not?
Sure.
I think he's just going to say, I'm going to end the game. He can't Reno. At most, he can Ice Block. If he Ice Blocks, how does he kill the questing? Like, he would pretty much need exactly Polymorph Ice Block, and then there's still going to be more power on the board because of the card, like the Buccaneer, for example.
Yeah, my only concern with that would be if he has Ice Block Polymorph, and then he can take care of the 15-11, he can take care of the 5-2 or the 4-4, whatever his priority is.
He'll gain a 4-4, it's fine.
Yeah, it's true. And I do want it, because he also, HotMEOWTH still has Second Auctioneer and Edwin in his deck, I believe, and a second Questing Adventurer, so he has a lot of things to combine with the prep in the long run, but definitely not calling this a mistake by any stretch of the imagination. Getting this extra 3-2 on board just to represent more avenues for lethal for himself makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I think HotMEOWTH really just realized that every single turn, past, what, 3-4 turns, PNC's just struggled to even stay alive.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what? For want of a prep that I might not even need at some point, he has Leroy and Cold Blood in hand.
Right.
Like, you know what? I'm just going to play prep and it's fine. Yeah, just get away with it there. And yeah, it's a few cool choices there, but not too much for PNC here, so. Oh, I told you you'd get a 4-4.
There's an ambush. There is a second ambush. Reno doesn't even get drawn to have an impact, but the Nerubians come out to play nonetheless. PNC with no answers, and HotMEOWTH squares it up.
Yeah, and we are actually going to travel through time and go into the last game of this series. This series, of course, as the Swiss rounds all happen at the same time, all the players have been playing, so we just brought you that cool game there from HotMEOWTH. So in some of the other games, what really stuck out for game 3 for me, which would be the next game that you guys won't see, it was Pirate Warrior versus the Reno Mage and HotMEOWTH's Pirate Warrior. He basically built a board for up to turn 5. On turn 6, PNC drew the Reno, but then he took 20 damage straight after that to just force him right back out the game. Reno did not matter.
Yeah, and game 4 was a very, very simple story. Rogue up against Mage the other way around. PNC's Rogue this time, and his opening hand was Prep Beneath the Grounds, Edwin Van Cleef. Game over.
Done. Yep, so we are going to go straight into game 5 and see what happens in the final game between these two players. HotMEOWTH on his Mage and PNC on his Mage. Quite a difficult one, I find, to actually navigate this matchup, just because there's so many odd things that can come up. There's nothing really too stable about it, I would say.
Yeah, it's strange because there's probably more random effects going on in this mirror than in the Reno Lock mirror in terms of purely cards that say the word random on them in some way. Yeah. But I think this is a much more difficult matchup to play than the Reno Lock mirror. I think the skill edge in this mirror is a lot higher on average. So yeah, I really enjoy watching this, and two very similar deck lists. I think we're seeing Pyroblast from PNC and no Pyroblast from HotMEOWTH is the big glaring difference, but settle in for a long one here, boys, because Reno Mage generally goes the distance.
Yeah, and it's not often that one can finish off the game that much quicker than the other, although the benefit for the Pyro list from PNC is that HotMEOWTH has to consider it. It's very much, you mentioned the Reno Lock mirror. Well, if both players play the Leroy combo, you know what damage you could potentially take, right? And you have to deal with that. Whereas PNC doesn't have to worry too much about huge burst coming out from HotMEOWTH, but PNC's just packing a whole extra 10.
PNC here, slow start from him, slow start from HotMEOWTH as well. As you would expect, hugely value-based, resource-based matchup generally, unless one player is really pushing for that massive burst combo finish. But even that is hard to set up because you
really hard to set up.
You almost need to like force the Reno first somehow, then Alex Straza them back down to 15, and then set up your burst combo from there. Kind of rare to happen in a Reno Mage mirror, so it tends to just become grindy, last threat wins, trying to get the most value out of each card as you possibly can. PNC is happy to draw cards here. That's the first indicator we got, because he's just dropped his Blood Mage on the board, so he's not planning out for fatigue quite yet. He thinks the game will end before that, and I think the early days of the matchup, we saw it go to fatigue quite often. The more and more we move on, the rarer and rarer it is for this game to end in a fatigue situation.
Yeah, I'm definitely on that side of the fence, because even if you take like the value potions from Kazakus, the 10 mana summon minions, summon an 8/8 demons, you know, things like that, then those minions you summon are probably just going to kill your opponent, right? Like, it's not often you've like, I'm going to build loads of minions and then wait till fatigue. You know, a lot of the time those kind of power potions, even though they are all about the value, which is kind of the fatigue matchup, you actually just end the game off the back of them anyway. I do like this style here.
And that's the big objective in the matchup, is to build a board that your opponent can't deal with. And you can definitely do that in this matchup more so than the Reno Lock matchup, because there is no Twisting Nether equivalent in this matchup. There's nothing that's just a full board nuke with a small asterisk next to it that says except the mass polymorph option from Kazakus, which can change things up a little bit.
And also as well, the mass polymorph, the sheep still do damage. You know, if you polymorph 7 minions, that's just 7 damage if you can't deal with it the same turn. So always something to consider. Obviously, we've been talking about the matchup as generalizations, because well, you guys have eyes too. There isn't too much going on early on. There's just a lot of working out when to use the right cards. And this is actually a good time to come more focused onto the game here, because choosing when to drop Emperor and when you decide that is enough value, or even more accurately, the correct type of value. Because a lot of the time you might have like 6 cards in hand, you drop Emperor and you're like, great, what's those 6 cards like, and the cards you combo together?
There's also a tempo consideration as well, and this was actually quite huge in the Freeze Mage mirror previously. Sometimes you just coined Emperor so your opponent could not play their Emperor on turn 6. They have to react to your Emperor. I think there's an element of that to what HotMEOWTH just did there. Yeah, sure, he has a nice, decent-looking Antonidas hand to go along with the Emperor Thaurissan, but it's also just blocking so many options, and from here, you get to be the guy enforcing tempo every turn because you forced your opponent to take a purely reactive turn based on your coin play.
Yeah, and this is kind of awkward for HotMEOWTH in this spot. You saw him just hover over Kazakus because, frankly, any other card is kind of useless. He has Blizzard, Frost Nova, Flame Strike. Pointless because there are no minions on the board and both players aren't even trying to develop minions. He has Reno. Well, you're not going to heal for 5, and this is how bad it is. He pings and oozes on this turn. He's just like, I'm just going to just tentatively dip my toe in the water of the actual board, see what happens here with this ooze, and then go from there to try and edge something out of PNC.
Windmill Slam Antonidas, go. That was the play for sure. No.
Oh, really? So,
yeah, all right.
Top tier advice from one of our analysts here. Just slam Antonidas.
But it goes back to what I was saying before, where it seems like a weird play to coin Emperor and then you just have no follow-up the next turn, right? Like, your opponent is going to play reactively, so it's not like you could have budgeted, a Fireball from your hand as being something that you were going to play the next turn. You probably knew that unless you drew your way out of it, your next turn was going to be a pretty big whiff. But it's just about blocking your opponent's options, making them play the game at your pace. And things like Emperor Thaurissan, Fandral Staghelm in Druid, these are cards that have this unappreciated power where as soon as they hit the board, you take immediate control of the matchup because the entire board objective becomes focused around dealing with that one
Hyperton, basically.
Exactly.
It's like an invisible Hyperton. Right. And just looking at the Discover there from the Courier, there was the Mana Worm, I believe Arcane Missiles? Was it Missiles?
Circle of Healing, wasn't it?
Yeah, Circle of Healing. Can't have 2 mage cards. And then the Cabal Trafficker.
Trafficker, yes.
And I made a discovery recently. I don't play too much.
So did PNC just then. It's Cabal Trafficker.
Nice. That wasn't even planned. God, you get that one for free. I don't play too much Arena. This card is sick in Arena,
It's
or at
pretty
least
good.
it was for me.
So,
I was like absolutely amazed, and I would love to see this card more and more. And maybe if there's a demon style, Reno lock or just a demon lock anyway, like the old days, because I think the card is pretty sweet, and I hope it does some crazy work for PNC.
And again, HotMEOWTH just with another big whiff of a turn, pinging the face. I'm sure now PNC is like,
look at the nod. He's just like,
oh yeah, yeah. As long as he's got hand space here, I'm imagining we are going to see that trafficker just come down and hit the board now, and I think he's fine. He's at 9 now, so he'll play it, go back up to 9 from the 1 random demon. Yep, seems good.
Yep. Yeah, that looks okay. There was always a chance as well he could have Kazakus and Soulcast. The Kazakus back into the deck just for like, we were talking about not going to fatigue, but if you can get that kind of value from a card, you do it. But it looks like he's just happy with the Trafficker, just wants to keep it simple. And what is the demon?
Tiny Knight of Evil.
Best named demon in game.
It's solid. We'll take that. My favourite moment, or one of my favourite moments while casting, is casting with Nimch, and he accidentally just called it Tiny Knight of Tiny Evil, which I just find
brilliant.
So much more adorable.
Yeah, that's actually kind of great. Can't even manage big time evil.
No. Just small fractions of evil.
Yeah. And the bonus now for HotMEOWTH, however weird this sounds, is that because PNC played something, he can respond now as opposed to just sitting with a lot of responsive cards going, please play a minion. And he is going to do it with the Fireball, but download effectively another whiff. At this point, he just wants to play just anything in terms of minion base, like Water Elemental is a great draw, just to put a threat on the board yourself for your opponent.
Yeah, shades of the Control Warrior mirror, at least for moments from HotMEOWTH's side, where you're kind of sat there saying, oh, please play cards so I can get some of this stuff out of my hand. I'm just stuck with all this removal and nowhere to throw it at. And it looks like PNC is saying, hey, I've got a free turn here. I might as well try this. This is hugely high reward and extremely low risk in this position. If this pays off, I can end the game right now. If you have the answer, great. We just start again. Like, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, and it's got exactly. It's got multiple ways of paying off for him as well. There's not like just one good scenario. This outcome is like, well, great, force Reno. I've got plenty of value in hand. There's still plenty left in the deck. I can just keep going. And like you said, Reno's gone. And most importantly, PNC still has Reno. So he can kind of put himself up on, like 1 up on the tally here. He sort of swapped Alexstrasza for Reno.
Just going to go ahead and Frost Nova the 8/8 just to lock it out. Didn't really have a much better answer to it. Try and set it up to be dealt with. You could even set it up to be dealt with over a couple of turns from here with maybe Antonidas Frostbolt in the future, things like that. But it's going to be Dirty Rat into Doomsayer here. And his plan of flame striking this board no longer looks too promising because that will lose him his Alexstrasza. So he's going to have to readjust here if he even can. Does he have a way to clear the Doomsayer at this point? He'd have to throw so many resources at it.
He might have to, though, because the problem is this Doomsayer just isn't bad at all for HotMEOWTH. He's fine.
I just don't think it's worth it. It'd be, what, Torch and Frostbolt and the ping to take care of the Doomsayer at this point. That's ugly.
It is, but the situation isn't very pretty, to be honest, in the first place. Because this is rough. Like, HotMEOWTH gains an empty board. He doesn't even have to worry about Alexstrasza anymore. And now he can start developing the minions like we can see. The Water Elemental is just drawn.
Right, here's the thing though. You say now he can start developing the minions. From PNC's perspective, you'd be very entitled to ask the question of what minions? He doesn't have any.
We're getting through the deck here, so come on.
No, I'm with you. But he hasn't played any minions for the last 2 or 3 turns that he's had the potential to. So PNC probably doesn't expect the punish to be too severe for giving this free turn of tempo. And yeah, sure, he lost 2 cards to that board. One of them was a pretty important, massive 8/8 dragon, but just to take care of the Doomsayer, he'd have to give up 2 cards anyway, and don't forget, he's then leaving the Reno Jackson and HotMEOWTH minions intact anyway.
Sure.
So they're getting additional value as well. I don't think it works out in his favor in the long run.
Think about potentially just soul casting the Alexstrasza? Just to get it back in the deck, you kind of half negate the issue of losing it, and the problem I have with soul casting the Kazakus, or planning to, is that a lot of the time you want to play it with Bran. You want to Bran Kazakus, but then the second you soul cast that becomes like a really awkward situation in which you have 2 Kazakus in the deck. And then you miss Reno, so
and then your Cruel the Unshackled doesn't work anymore. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it kind of some tricky situations. I'm just wondering what his aim for the soul caster is.
it's a fair point, but I think with Kazakus in hand, it is just overall too much value, because, you know, if he gets in a situation where he thinks his Reno effects are going to be important, he doesn't have to brand Soulcaster it. He can just Soulcaster it and just have the 2 Kazakus going on. You know, 2 Kazakus is plenty for most situations, so with the Kazakus already in hand, I would have been surprised to see him use the Soulcaster for anything else in this position.
Berkeley Bully coming into hand there to maybe help with this board. This could be okay. He still needs to deal with this Water Elemental though, because although the freeze effect to face just isn't a big deal, you know, to Mage specifically, it's still going to be a really bit of a pain there to deal with the actual minions. As even just freezing a minion out to a certain extent just for 1 turn can actually just change the way that the following turns work in terms of trades.
Yep, so Torch Blast can take care of it. Buggy Bully coming down, empty board, great position against any spell-based deck. We mentioned how good it was against Rogue in the previous matchup. Very similar situation against Mage, and HotMEOWTH is just going to have to be forced to give up the coin here. Firelands Portal and the pink will take care of it. Harrison comes down. Pretty middle-of-the-road outcome from Firelands Portal. Nothing too spectacular, but at least he's kept his grip on the board, which, as you pointed out, has been given to him since that Doomsayer turn. Whether that was, you know, a deliberate decision or the correct decision, we could debate for hours and hours and hours, I'm sure. But the reality is that the reason that HotMEOWTH has tempo is that PNC allowed that Doomsayer to go off.
Yeah, and just played the Dirty Rat in general. It is always a risky moment when you Dirty Rat with the plan of Flame Strike that only does 4. 4's a lot, but there's a lot of minions in the deck that have more than 4 health.
Yep. It's true, but the Doomsayer was just particularly awkward.
I mean, yeah, that was terrible.
If another minion had come down, then, sure, if a huge priority minion like Antonidas comes out, then sure, you divert your plan and you throw everything at Antonidas and you take it out of the equation. It's just, Doomsayer isn't a high-value target in itself. It just created this incredibly awkward board objective that PNC just didn't want to deal with.
Yeah. I feel like this game is almost like a firefight to a certain extent, in which the 2 players sort of went off on everything, unloaded all their ammo, and now they have to just sit and reload and get ready, because you've seen the game suddenly just hit a bit of a lull again in terms of, well, the boards are kind of empty.
Bit of a what, sorry?
A lull.
A lull? Okay, cool. Just wanted to check.
Okay. And yeah, so it's basically just working towards who wants to take that, step again onto the board. Very similar to the early game.
Yeah, it's actually looking like, since we set it up at the start of the game, that this matchup doesn't go to fatigue that often. It's inevitably looking like it's going to reach the position now where fatigue is a real option, because, sure, we have the massive explosivity of the 2 Kazakus to come into play, potentially more than 2 Kazakus depending on what happens with Soulcasters. But as you said, a lot of the heavy hitters have gone down here, and these players seem to be settling back into a long grind here. PNC has continued to draw, though, using Arcane Intellect previously, so he doesn't look like he's too committed to the fatigue plan. We'll see if it does reach that stage.
Well, also as well, winding all the way back to the start of the game, we were discussing the decks. One of the few differences is PNC has 10 damage out of nowhere.
It's true.
And HotMEOWTH just doesn't, so maybe he's trying to draw through it to then surprise him. Not surprise him, he knows the cards in the deck, but use the Pyro to kind of counteract the potential fatigue difference.
So now, this is an interesting junction for PNC in this matchup, as he needs to decide whether he wants a value potion, whether he wants a reactive potion. He had very solid options for all of them during that pick. He could have taken the sheep option as a reaction. He could have taken +3 demons, which isn't an amazing value option, but it's a decent value option at least.
Sometimes you get Cruel Doomguard.
Sometimes you do, and then sometimes it just doesn't work.
Okay, so HotMEOWTH does have a few options himself now. Master Solia, if he wants to combine it potentially with a 10-mana potion later on that you can get from Kazakus, is going to play the steady play here with the Azure Drake into the reduced down Blizzard. Playing most of the board, only leaving the Soulcaster up on the board as a 3/1. That can just be pinged off next turn, not too much of a threat.
Yep, so PNC now, just considering his options, Drake comes down on the board, which is a pretty priority threat to take care of. Does have Roaring Torch in hand, which is, you know, probably considered a slight overreaction. He also has 2 Flame Strikes, so I'm wondering how often you just go ahead and Flame Strike and as your Drake and feel fine about it.
Yeah, I was going to mention a bit earlier, actually. We got a little bit sidetracked on some other points in the game, but the Babbling Book did give PNC that second Flame Strike, and we were discussing, you know, potential of fatigue. And a lot of the time, if you clear off the final minions, then you win by just having 1 minion and they don't have any, you catch up in damage. And the second Flame Strike is huge to that.
So PNC, as he was going through this Antonidas turn, did mouse over the potion conveniently, ended up taking Transform All, Sheep All, plus Summon an 8/8. So pretty much best of both worlds, reactive and a tempo push at the same time. Pretty solid swing card to have in this matchup.
Also as well, you just know what you're getting, right? If you summon 3 minions and you get Doomsayer, then ultimate feeling bad about that one. The Polymorph going to be the answer. Straightforward answer to the Antonidas. Clear that one open. Not really let PNC get too much value from that card.
And again, just the pace of this matchup has just ground to an absolute halt after it started slowly, as all Reno Mage mirrors tend to do. The mid game was very explosive with HotMEOWTH pushing the early Emperor and then PNC's response to that, but it's slowed down now and it's looking more and more like we might just be weaving our way towards a fatigue situation.
Yeah, I also believe that both these players are 2-1 correct at the moment. So when they go to that 2-2, you start, as we mentioned earlier, you know, dicing death a little bit. So there's even the consideration that both players don't want to, like, you know, potentially make that misstep by, you know, putting the first foot forward, so to speak. Sure. So then if they do that, slip up and lose, well, suddenly they're on 2 losses in the Swiss, and that's a very, very risky position to be in.
Yeah, in this position, 2 wins is about the earliest you can drop down to 2 losses and expect to have any realistic hope of pushing through on tiebreakers. And still, obviously you have to clean sweep going forward. You're also relying on your opponents to have done very well in their remaining games as well. It's possible, much more possible than going to 2 losses in round 3 or round 2, but still an uphill struggle. So this is a hugely important, verge of elimination almost game for these 2 players. And very, very fitting that it's in a control-heavy matchup that's coming right the way down to the wire itself.
Yeah, it's really great because it's what I like about this matchup. You just never know where it's going to go. And this Kazakus pick is going to be very important for HotMEOWTH because you know what PNC's potion is.
The sweet, sweet plays. Kazakus immediately followed by Solia, immediately followed by the free 10-mana potion. That is a huge push. Goes triple demon, and that is about as poor as it gets. None of the high-value demons. Flame Imp, Tiny Knight of Evil, and Void Terror.
Well, you put them all together and you get one big one, basically.
That's fair.
It's like a Transformers effect or something. Maybe, it's going to be a tough one to pull off, though, because the Flame Imp doesn't have much impact at this point in the game, whilst damaging yourself as well. And if the game is going to go to fatigue, then the extra damage is really not going to be very welcome from HotMEOWTH here.
Yeah, the reason why these minions are so bad for this matchup is that they activate bad cards for your opponent. So if you suddenly have a turn where you go, you know, Flame Imp, Tiny Knight of Evil, go, then suddenly Blizzard, which is a terrible card in the matchup, actually has a good target from PNC. So he really would have been looking for the high value stuff. Obviously, Jiraxxus is massive if he can get it down with Ice Block up in particular. Yeah. But anything, you know, Doomguard or above, Pit Lord even, he would have been happy with. Just big things that he can dunk on the board.
It's going to just eat up that Tiny Knight of Tiny Evil, apparently, with the Void Terror. And, you know, he builds a reasonable minion. It's definitely not a great outcome, but at least he can get a 6/5 on the board, along with the Burgly Bully. So 10 mana, 4/6, 6/5. Definitely not terrible when you want to just, you know, put that pressure on PNC here.
Yeah, PNC has the Solia push right back at you if he wants it, but he's going to choose to hold back the 5/5 here and just go for the potion.
He equips his sheep with pants. With this potion. It's kind of great.
10 mana, like, give your sheep a pair of trousers. Yeah, excellent.
Fantastic. Just getting the 8/8, and we can confirm that that demon is in fact not wearing pants of any description.
You've checked?
I mean, I can just see from the artwork. Okay. I've not given any in-depth thought, to be honest.
Sure. Babbling Book going to come down here. HotMEOWTH. PNC picked up a Flame Strike, which is a very high-value card, but a very wacky one for the matchup, not particularly useful. Fireball is just an evergreen card. There is no matchup where you don't want more fireballs. And speaking of more fireballs, the best way in the game to get yourself a handful of nice, juicy sources of 6 damage is happening right now. Frostbolt Ice Lance to effectively take care of this 8/8. And this is, again, the last 3 turns have just been so explosive back and forth. Or the last 4 or 5 turns even going all the way back to HotMEOWTH's Kazakus Master Potion turn. They're really trying to bring out the big hitters now, and neither of these players, I don't think, are planning for fatigue at this point. But the amount of power they each have in their hand might just cancel the other out and lead us down that road.
Yeah, it looks like it could happen, because as much as we can see it, 4 fireballs in HotMEOWTH's hand, a good chunk of that, almost half of it, is actually just in the 1 Pirate Blast from PNC. So they can actually both put out a lot of damage. It's just HotMEOWTH's fireballs are more flexible than the Pirate Blast. PNC does still have a torch and a 3-mana fireball of his own, so pretty much tit for tat at the moment.
Yeah, definitely has to find a clean way of dealing with the Antonidas this turn. It looks like it's going to be a Blizzard, pretty low-value Blizzard in the end. He could have pretty much achieved the same thing just with a Fireball and a Ping and left the 2 1/1s hanging around, but he is protecting his Ice Block with the utmost integrity right now. Those 2 1/1s make all the difference in terms of which turn he's going to lose his Ice Block on.
Yeah, here comes the Dirty Rat, and there goes Bran.
Uh-oh, there goes the value train.
Yeah, although PNC does have the second Kazakus in his deck, so he has gained, or will effectively, if he draws through his deck, still gain 2 Kazakus potions, but it still never feels too great to just have Brad dealt with so easily, and leave a 2/6 on the board that does need to be dealt with.
Volcanic Potion picked up yet another of the big whiff cards that, potentially could have been good against that Flame Imp kind of board that I was talking about. And HotMEOWTH, I think, deliberately holding back the Flame Imp, recognizing that it's only a negative for him right now. It's going to deal 3 damage to himself, and it just gets caught in Flame Strikes, in Blizzards, in Volcanic Potions, in all these cards that are a struggle for your opponent to use in the mirror match.
Yeah, I was looking at PNC's hand. It's like, do you Volc Potion Flame Strike? It's like, just to actually clear off the Dirty Rat, you do not want to use Torch. Like, on the 2/6, the problem is it lines up very well. Oh, does he want to use it? Oh, I don't know about this. That feels like a lot of damage to put into a Dirty Rat, especially if he's played Ink Master as well.
It is, in fact, the requisite amount of damage to put into a Dirty Rat to kill it, Raven.
Okay, Mr. Maths. No need for that. You know what I mean. Listen to what I mean, know what I say.
Fair enough.
It's a high-value damage card to put into a 2-attack minion. There you go.
I agree with that assessment. He's going to. I think he's just trying to make the push here. I think both of these players have recognized they haven't set their stall out too well for fatigue this game, and PNC, now losing his Bran, also realizes that HotMEOWTH still has the Bran Soulcaster combination left available to him as you see the Bran get drawn. So PNC might feel like he is in a rough spot here in terms of fatigue. Unfortunately, we don't have our glorious card counters for these side games on the screen. The one game we've really needed them has unfortunately been a side game, and we don't have our little graphical innovation to let you know how many cards are left. Hopefully we can get that information to you very soon, or we will get the alert that one player is running out of cards.
Yeah, it's going to happen very soon, I imagine, and there it is.
Nailed it.
It was like you knew, Saul. Like you knew. But that is a very important card to come out from HotMEOWTH there. The Courier to combine with Bran is just insane value because of the potential power of the cards it offers up.
So now the question is, 2 more Couriers in the deck, yes or no?
Yes. I vote yes.
All right. And HotMEOWTH appears to agree. Picks up Resurrect. Yeah, that's really interesting pickup.
Business.
Definitely. Of course, Doomsayer in the pool. We basically know all about the risks of resurrecting minions as Reno Mage because of the Kazakus potion, and the same thing is very true from Resurrect.
Yeah.
Whenever a card has an outcome that ranges all the way from an 8/8 to a thing that blows up your own board, that's when you know you are taking the risky option.
But the bit that is positive about it is it's only 2 mana. It's easy to play, whereas you go for the 10-mana potion that we see Resurrect come from most often, that's your whole turn. You've just got to deal with the outcome and hope for the best. This is only a 2-mana commitment, and now PNC needs another Roaring Torch to deal with this Dirty Rat.
I was going to say, how much damage do you need to kill a Dirty Rat again?
Approximately 6.
Okay, good. Just so we're clear.
Exactly 6. Oh, now it's a combo with the Flame Imp and the guy who buffs demons. I can't remember his name.
Crystal Weaver, I believe.
Really?
I think so.
Okay. It's called Demon Weaver. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of making a joke about it, but it does sort of trade off some of the some of the damage from the flaming that it's going to do by just buffing itself and Corrupted Heal Bar.
Oh wow, HotMEOWTH actually, despite hitting the fatigue warning, the 1 card remaining warning so much earlier than PNC, was actually nowhere near behind as it looked, because he still had the Brand to put 2 cards back into his deck, and he still has the Forgotten Torch to put yet another card back in his deck. So this one is going to come right the way down to the wire.
Yeah, and also the cards he put back, because it's the Courier, although it doesn't put cards in your deck necessarily, it does gain you cards and just way more value as well going forward. So HotMEOWTH is actually in a great position, and now PNC is starting to suffer just a little bit from what HotMEOWTH suffered from earlier in this game, of just having like nothing to actually do at this point.
Right, but now if PNC has been paying very, very close attention, and it's not easy because this hand read has got very, very complex, but he knows the full deck list. So he knows the remaining cards that he has to beat are the Antonidas generated Fireballs, the Alex Straza, which is the 1 remaining natural card left in the deck that he hasn't seen. Then he adds 1 Cabal Courier, which he knows is in the deck from the Brand, and 1 Mystery Demon that is also remaining in the hand. So he can now set out his stall perfectly, apart from that 1 concealed demon that's not being played, to try and get his hand to interact in a favorable way.
There's 2 Couriers in, right?
I think he's down to his last card.
Oh, I thought he Brand Soulcasted.
He did. He's already played the second.
He played this. Oh, okay.
That's where the Crystal Weavers come from.
This game's been very long.
It has.
It's been very.
Yeah, I got you. I'm here for you, buddy.
Yeah, look, too many demons for my liking this mage deck. There's just demons everywhere. Forgive me, please. It's been a long one. There's the second one.
Oh, there is actually 1 more card remaining after this second Courier as well. So I was slightly off in my assessment as well, Raven.
Huge mistake.
Huge mistake.
I expect
Unforgivable.
better from you, Sol.
I'll be fired immediately.
After this game.
Okay. Cabal Courier number 3 coming out. What is going to be the pickup this time? Unfortunately, we do get to see the Discover options immediately, so we don't get to assess the strengths and weaknesses of the relative picks, but a Shadow Word Death pickup is...
What is he trying to death?
Fascinating. Yeah, excellent question. Because
do you have an answer?
Everything that I can say said from PNC's perspective on the previous turn is also true from HotMEOWTH.
So the Resurrect from the Kazakas, of course.
That is actually just an insurance policy against an 8/8 Demon or a Resurrect play from the second Kazakus. I would imagine that the 3 options he was presented were just bad.
Terrible, yeah. And to be honest, out of all of the 3 Couriers, there has been nothing standout. It was Resurrect, Shadow Bolt. Was it Shadow Bolt?
It's Crystal Weaver.
Crystal Weaver.
Yeah.
Resurrect and that, yeah.
We've been through this.
It's too many discovers. Too many discovers.
Okay.
No, because he had 4. Because he Brand the Courier. The first Courier.
What to do?
And then there's 2 more Couriers.
What to do?
Wait, what? You've just blown my mind, Raven.
I tried.
I don't know. I think we should just stop this conversation before we get too far down the rabbit hole.
Anyway. Kazakas.
Kazakus
Potion.
Something we know and understand.
These will clear everything up for us when we have to decide what kind of potion it is and what it's going to resurrect, if it is that one indeed. Do you think he... Oh, okay, I was just going to say, do you think he has to go for a 10 to try and win the value game? Because he is actually gone for a 5.
No, I think 5 is the right decision. I think you saw PNC, while we were talking about Cabal Couriers, he was in very, very stressful thought trying to work things out. And I think he has realized he does not have the time to play a 10-mana potion. He realizes that just the status quo is not in his favor in this spot, so he needs a quicker play so he can try and reverse the situation, potentially with his Reno in the same turn, and then make a big push from there.
Yeah, and he has the very difficult decision of when this Pyroblast is going to get played, because it's your whole turn, Inkmaster Soul is gone. The usual combo of Inkmaster, Pyroblast, Fireball, for example, just can't really work out. Or, Roaring Torch or Reduced Fireball, should I say. Can't really work out. So he needs to work, really think about when he can afford to spend this 10 mana, if he can afford it at all.
And here's the secondary factor of PNC's intensive calculations on the previous turn. He was making sure there was no way he could get popped at 1 HP that turn by not healing, by not playing the Reno. Because when you are taking fatigue damage, The Ice Block does not protect you as long as your opponent can do the exact numbers. If you're fatiguing for 1, they have to leave you at exactly 1 HP. If you're fatiguing for 2, they have to leave you at 2 or below, and so on. So PNC made sure there was no possible way in Hearthstone that could happen to him, and then took the 1 extra turn to get greedy with his Reno, took the 5 mana potion, as I said, to set up this exact situation that you see here.
Yeah, but HotMEOWTH was ready with the Shadow of Death.
Oh, yes.
He planned for this scenario exactly, and you can defend against the Reno and the Demon. And, you know, I do like the Reno coming down this early as well. Obviously, we can see PNC didn't have many actual choices to make in terms of when to play the Reno. But a lot of the time, if you try and hold on to Reno through fatigue, the point in which you drop it actually doesn't make much difference because your opponent, you take so much fatigue damage that's stacked up over time anyway. And now there's no more cards left to draw. It's going to be a Flame Imp and an Alexstrasza versus an Acolyte, a Pyroblast, and a Polymorph. Polymorph answers the Alexstrasza along with a ping. And Pyroblast does, just straight up. So we'll see what PNC decides to do. And the onus is actually, I believe, on HotMEOWTH here to do something first.
So the way this is set up right now, assuming HotMEOWTH pings face a couple of times, which he definitely has the mana to do, PNC will die on his 7 damage fatigue draw, which is 5 draws from now. HotMEOWTH in that time will die himself, so HotMEOWTH actually does have to act in this position.
Yeah, and he's the choice. Not too much of a surprise is going to be the Alexstrasza. It suddenly, cuts that clock almost in half to a large extent, but we do see the Polymorph onto ping. And then HotMEOWTH has to play the Flame Imp, right?
Okay, what did HotMEOWTH take from fatigue on the previous turn?
I feel like this was a quiz I was not ready for, because I was looking at the Alexstrasza, okay? It was 2, right?
If it was 2, then he'll take 3, 4, 5, which is 12. He will die. Yeah, it was 3. So he can take 4 and 5 safely. Most importantly, Pyroblast will put him down if he does not play the Flame Imp. Yeah, excellent recognition of the situation from HotMEOWTH. If he did not do this, Pyroblast hits him in the face. He ends up on 3 HP. The fatigue draw for 4 comes out and kills him. So this Flame Imp plays around Pyroblast from HotMEOWTH. This is the level of fatigue management, ice block management that we saw in one of the greatest games of Hearthstone of all time, Ostkaka versus Tice in the World Championship.
Yeah, and this is coming down to that age-old grudge match, the Pyroblast versus the Flame Imp. Who is going to win? Nobody knows, but this has been building up for a long time. At least in this game anyway, so this is very tricky, and PNC has really been hurt by the fact that he wanted to draw early on. We saw that. He was not bothered about drawing, but the Acolyte came just too late, and now that Acolyte is just a dead card in his hand, because the fact that he could... oh my god, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
We live in a world that the Flame Imp has been Pyroblasted, and it is actually seemingly the correct play.
PNC is feeling himself here. I think he's worked it out. This ping is going to go to the face. I believe he is taking his 5th fatigue hit here. Fatigues for 5, leaves him alive at 1 HP on this turn, which means his ping goes the other way, puts HotMEOWTH at 5, and the game ends to the fatigue draw. BM Acolyte, let's go. Come on.
Yeah, it's going to happen. There it is. Get him. I did use my last card, and that's going to be it. PNC takes an extremely close series. And, you guys missed some of the games earlier, but they were actually pretty great. The last game was super intense. Great play from both players there. And it came down to a Pyroblast on a Flame Imp in a Reno Mage Mirror.
The only thing I still don't know about that matchup is how many Cabal Couriers you think there were in that deck. I have no idea.
20 at this point, why not?
Amazing game in the Reno Mage Mirror. Just exploded in the middle, didn't look like it was going to go to fatigue. Then both players had to reset, set their stall out to fatigue. Both players actually understood the fatigue calculations at the right time. Both players acted when they were supposed to, and because of that, the status quo continued, and it was actually PNC that came out on top.
Yeah, truly a great game. We can check in with Frodan and Cable.